So John, I mean, tell me a little bit, knowing a little bit about your bio, having worked in New York in technology, you make the transition to Nutmeg State Financial Credit Union. Why make that move now?
It's a good question. I really have come to appreciate delivering value to consumers, right? It's just fascinating to me how the world powered by technology has sort of ramped up the people will pay for stuff that they value and they will not pay for stuff that they don't value. And I think lessons about that are just all over the consumer space, right? And I was really struck by the spirit of the credit union, right? The credit union idea that we should actually help the local community, whether that's people, individuals, or organizations or municipalities. Like, somebody should be looking out for whether or not the local community has a chance in this new complicated world. And I love that motivation. And when I learned that lots of credit unions aren't really sure how they're supposed to be fighting that fight, and Nutmeg really presented a path to really move that fight to the next level. It just was such a cool challenge to take the deliver value challenge that the world is ever raising the bar on and say, well, why can't credit unions compete in that world? And the answer is they can. They have to compete in ways that they didn't compete before, but they absolutely can. And Nutmeg is an example of that, and there are other examples of it. But I think it's a worthy cause to build a good solution to solve a valuable problem, and it's one that consumers will speak with their actions and their wallets, literally, to show you that you're doing a good job or you're not.
All right. So John Korber, you're the Senior Vice President of Technology at Nutmeg, and I hear in your response there that the nature of competition is changing in some ways, or needs to, for credit unions to survive in this new world. Is this about online and mobile and implementation of different, platforms and channels, or is there something more fundamental that you're working on at Nutmeg?
Yeah, it's far more fundamental than that. I think it's sort of core startup value proposition kind of strategy that says, what are we selling and to whom, right? What are we selling? And I think for too long, credit unions have said, well, we're selling financial stability, which manifests itself as deposits and loans. That's what we're selling. And I'll put icing on that cake, or I'll change the flavor a little bit, but I'm really selling those things, right? And I think that what's happening in the world is that's not what consumers and communities are necessarily in the market for anymore, right? And if credit unions can get their head around that, they're well equipped to deliver what they are in the market for. If they're really just stuck on, we offer deposits and loan products, they will find themselves with fewer and fewer customers because the customer is not looking for those things per se.
So how do you define, given that we're in financial services, financial retail, and we have bank competitors that are regional and local and national, and they all have this mix, similar at least, if not exactly the same mix of products and services, where are we going? Where are you going at Nutmeg to change the nature of competition in your marketplaces?
I think for me, one of the sort of stories that I've used a lot that I really like is banks and credit unions exist because of the nature of money, because bartering was really inconvenient, right? You didn't want to trade your chickens for my bushel of corn. Like that's problematic from a society standpoint. Yeah. So society creates currency. People start accumulating currency. They decide they don't want the currency in their basement, and instead financial institutions get created to hold money and to put that money to use through lending it, right? Which really means that for the history of banks, they've existed for the holding of assets, right? The holding of value. And that value was always embodied by dollars, right? It was the holding of the currency that was the accepted thing, right? And that I think that really that was a little bit misguided, that really the people didn't care about holding my money. They care about whether I can use my money. They care about converting the value I get from my employer in the form of a paycheck into food that I can get for my family, right? I don't really care what the vehicles are there. I just care that I can make the conversion, right? And that as in the competitive landscape, other ways to make that conversion evolve, I need less and less of my bank to just hold my money for me, right? And so I think that banks and credit unions have to realize that they are really in the putting money to work business. They are not in the holding on to money and making sure that I don't lose it business. And I think the credit unions, if you think about the credit unions' origins, credit unions are actually designed to reduce risk and hold on to the money. Don't lose the money, right? Because that was a problem. But when you look at the average consumer, and I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but the average consumer doesn't have a ton of money in their checking account, right? They're living paycheck to paycheck. The money comes in and they spend it on something. It comes in and they put it on their credit card and then they pay off their credit card, right? And around we go. That is a transaction and value exchange world that we actually are living in, right? And so when you think of the most cutting edge consumer interfaces, whether it's Uber or Netflix or Amazon, those are all transaction engines which move value in one direction in exchange for value in another direction, right? I'll give you some money and you give me a movie, right? I'll give you some money and you give me a ride somewhere, right? And I think that those platforms really resonate with consumers because for consumers, that exchange is really what they're about. And so for a credit union to say, well, my strategy is accumulate a bunch of deposits and then hold on to it, they shouldn't be surprised that people aren't, flocking to give them deposits because the people are trying to actually put that money to use, right? So I think it's a shift from products as a holder of value to products as a mover of value, as an exchanger.
A conduit of value.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
A conduit. That's good.
So I know you've been doing some interesting things at Nutmeg in this value creation, working with different partners in the community. Can you describe a little bit of that? What's top of mind for you in ways that you're changing this competitive landscape?
Sure. So I think the one that comes to mind first is our relationship with AAA, the local chapter of AAA, not to be confused with AAA corporate. So we have a branch where in our branch, AAA is actually renting space from us inside of our branch. And there is a confluence of staff inside of the physical space who, when you walk in, can do things ranging from perform DMV transactions under AAA's umbrella, sell you a loan product, make a deposit, sell you a AAA membership, and all of the above. And it's all sort of mixed together. And the premise fundamentally is that the person walking in, the consumer off the street, be they AAA member or Nutmeg member or neither, doesn't care whether we call that place a Nutmeg branch or a AAA location or a DMV location. It is a place where I go to get something done, right? And so the more that we connect ourselves to, we have to get stuff done for people or they will go somewhere else and get it done. That really has been the sort of eye-opening thing. So we talk to our partners at AAA and say, what kinds of getting things done are you seeing? What kinds of needs could we meet here? Now, where that partnership gets very interesting is that one of the things that needs to get done is AAA has a cash handling problem. They take cash payments in the actual location. So they've been paying their armored car service who comes to pick up the cash every night. So we've been building a digital vaulting product that will allow them to effectively extend our bank vault into their point of sale system so that when they take that cash payment and they put it into the drawer, that drawer deposit is actually a deposit into their bank account at Nutmeg. Right? And so we are cutting out the armored car service, the expense, right? The transaction that happens there while they move their money around in a circle by shortening the distance between the end consumer and it getting into AAA's bank account, right? So we're really talking about a symbiotic relationship between Nutmeg's banking services, the merchant needs of AAA, and the consumer needs of the walk-in person, and really trying to make that Venn diagram really be nice and woven together.
And very interesting. Now, how does this, the phrase, the branch of the future. And what is the branch of the future going to look like? It sounds like you guys are mashing and morphing and twisting and the branch of the future in some ways that maybe we hadn't anticipated even a few years ago.
I think it's a great question. I think that the branch of the future doesn't look like a branch. Right. And I don't mean like the Capital One commercial where it looks like a coffee shop and then there's a branch bolted onto the side. Like, I think it is less and less a branch, because really what it is a place where I go to transact something that has to happen in a physical place. Right. So Amazon doesn't need cash registers because I can check out with my phone or on my browser. They do need places for them to deliver and pick up and accept returns. Right. So instead of them opening branches where you could do that, they partnered with Kohl's, or they partnered with the post office, or they partnered with the UPS store and said, these are all places where you can drop off a package. Right. So I don't think that you wouldn't describe any of those places as Amazon locations. They're just places in the world where you can do the one thing that you care about getting done with respect to your Amazon purchase, right? So I think that it is kind of dissolving, right? As I think about the branch of the future, it starts with a picture of our current branch and the walls kind of fade away and you end up just standing in the middle of your local town where commerce is happening, and the branch's role in that commerce is just sort of part of the ecosystem. It's not a standalone retail entity.
Very interesting. I think that's a great vision for where we're headed together. Before we hit the record button, John, both of us were chuckling a little bit about the interesting characters we know at DeLand QSO and those we get to work with, which is a blast. But what is it about the DeLand philosophy that ties together with this vision that you and Nutmeg have for the future of banking?
The single most important part of that is that this entire strategy is possible by controlling your own data, right? If I think that I'm in the business of simply selling loans, all of the digital fancy bells and whistles are just bolt-ons to my loan selling business. Right? They're borderline commodities that I bolt on to my business that is my real business, right? I think what is transformative about DeLand's perspective, and one that I've now come to understand and agree with, is that that's actually backwards, right? Really, your data is at the core of your business because meaningful, valuable exchanges are the thing that you should be selling. And that the loans are the commodity that are bolted onto the side. Right. So really the folks at DeLand are really, really focused on, look, you've got to have your data in a well-organized, centralized place that you control because that is your actual business. And that if you think your business is something else, you wouldn't adopt the cost or the commitment required to centralize and own that data. Your data will just be disparate and it'll be controlled by lots of other parties. Because you think you're actually in the selling loans business. And while you think you're in the selling loans business, you'll get commoditized. People will use your data for their own benefit. And who knows where you end up. You're not in a good place.
Not in a good place. I think that's the bottom line. Yeah, that's a great insight, John. I mean, I'm going to reference Nike here, and this might be tired. I know it's the business white papers and case studies, et cetera. But many years ago, when the folks came up with the slogan, just do it, I got to talk with the creative directors that worked on that some years ago. And the Nike executive team went crazy. Like, this is nuts. What are you talking about? We sell shoes. What do you mean just do it? Just do what? What's going on here? You guys are creatives. You got out there. Let's pull this back in and talk about shoes. And the Wyden and Kennedy folks, Dan Wyden in particular, told me that no. They had this long, painful discussion that said, no, you're not selling shoes. You're selling aspiration. Maybe athletic aspiration. The shoes are just a transaction. Anybody can do that.
Yeah.
But if you sell the aspiration first, the shoes become easy. Is there a sort of a parallel there with where you see financial services going today?
Yeah, I think there is. We've talked internally, lately about what does the consumer really value, to your point, the aspiration, right? So, If I want to go out to dinner with a friend of mine tonight, the part of that transaction that I value is the dinner with my friends, right? The social connection with my friend at this great restaurant where we haven't eaten in a while, right? No part of that valuable transaction includes me stopping at my favorite local ATM branch so that I can pull out some cash in order to facilitate the dinner, right? The ATM transaction has nothing to do with the thing that I actually value. It is at best a requirement, an inconvenience that I have to do before I go to this restaurant, right? And as soon as the world provides me with a easier way to get to that satisfying dinner, whether it's using my cell phone to pay at the restaurant, Venmoing my buddy who I'm having dinner with, paying with a gift card, right? Pick your example, but consumers will pick the one that is easier. They'll pick the one that is the easiest path to the thing that they actually value, right? And so if we think that they care where we put ATMs and whether or not there is a fee on your ATM transaction, and if the ATM has a big shiny screen or not, none of that matters. It matters to the industry veterans, but that has nothing to do with the consumer's actual value or their behavior. And if you understand that, you spend time getting closer to their behavior and their value. And if you don't understand it, you spend a lot of money on capabilities that seem to be valuable for your business that are not valuable for your customers. And capitalism is pretty clear about what happens when you do that.
Fantastic. John, I really appreciate it. I want to respect your time and let you go, but it's great to meet face to face. But I really appreciate the time and the conversation. Look forward to some more in the future for sure.
Sure. Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yeah, John, take care now.
All right. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.